Hi, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. I thought today we could look at an astounding atlas of altered states. I have my candle here. It's Sagittarius, the trailblazing archer. That's me. Ruling planet Jupiter. The scent is sea salt and mandarin. I don't know why I put my nose in the flame. Anyway, we'll just have that there. So I need to do something to just kind of relax a little bit. I have recently been told that I am the enemy within. And I should watch for military showing up at my house. What? So here we are. So this book, we've looked through it at least once before, I think once. And it says the real story of the states that never came to be. So an astounding atlas of altered states. Let's just see real quick. 50 states, it's such a nice round number, it might even seem preordained that America would gobble up the perfect amount of territory to create 50 just right states. Sorry, it wasn't nearly that tidy. You know the winners, but dozens of other statehood proposals didn't quite make the cut. Some came remarkably close to joining the Union. Others never had a chance. Many are still trying. It's possible that someday one of these pitches will get the green light, becoming state number 51. Okay, so we have already looked through this part. So if you want to watch that, you can just go search altered states, or I don't know, if I find it, I'll try to link it. So we were on this page, and what we have here is Comancheria. So we have Wyoming, Kansas, New Mexico, Texas, and then Comancheria, like Comanches, Comancheria. Texans are tough. Oh, wait. It says, oh, give them a home. Never mind, we want it back. I get it. Texans are tough, but the Comanche are tougher. How else would you explain Sam Houston's willingness to cut a deal to give the Comanche people their own land? In 1837, Texas was an independent republic. President Houston's proposal was simply an acknowledgement of what everyone already knew. The Comanche dominated much of western Texas, as well as large swaths of what is now Oklahoma and New Mexico. Interesting. All kinds of dirty tricks had been used to exterminate the Comanche, including poisoning more than 350 braves in 1838. But the attempts at eradication had little effect. Terrible. Because of their incredible expertise with horses, not true of every native tribe, despite what you see in movies, the Comanche were probably the best cavalry force in the world. It's reported that the Comanche horsemen were able to ride under a horse during battle, making them nearly impossible to hit. And let's be honest, because they weren't afraid to make war, the Comanche were rightly feared by settlers. Of course, the tribe would likely counter that they attacked only trespassers on their land. Fair enough. So, Texas Congress did not ratify Houston's plan. They hoped that, given enough time and enough new settlers, they could simply overpower the Comanche. In the end, that proved true. Comanche as incorporated into the boundaries of a modern map. That's what this is. Right. The empty areas in West Texas map were Comanche territory, whether the Texas government acknowledged it or not. Empty areas in West Texas map were the Comanche territory. Oh, so they're saying there's no cities here because it was all Comanche in this area, and here's Santa Fe and Albuquerque. Yeah, so it would have been this huge area. I mean, look at it compared to, like, interesting. Huh, I've never heard that. Cuba. A serious proposal that might have saved civilization. Here's Florida, and here's Cuba. It's not far from the coast of Florida at all. And then here are all the Caribbean islands. It might seem ludicrous to claim that a proposal to make Cuba into a state had the potential to save the earth, but I'm writing this with a straight face. I just realized you might not be able to see the book. Okay. Yeah, okay. In case you aren't old enough to remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, I should do a video on that. The Cuban Missile Crisis. Hold on. Hold up. Sorry. This happens sometimes. If you're new to my videos, just sometimes I can't move forward until I write. Whose notebook? This is not my notebook. I don't do math. Dang. I grabbed the wrong notebook. I hope that doesn't mean my son took mine. Let's just write it on here. Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. Here's a primer. The Soviet Union decided to park some nuclear missiles in Cuba and point them at the U.S. This was bad because they could then blast I'm having trouble reading. United States into the Stone Age before America had a chance to return the favor. Well, there's a lot more to it than that. That is just the basics. Politicians call this type of thing destabilizing, but for many Americans at the time, a better word was panic. All-out nuclear war seemed increasingly possible. Thankfully, U.S. President John Kennedy deftly diffused the situation, and the Soviets removed their missiles from Cuba. A nation exhaled. But the United States wouldn't have come to the brink of annihilation in an earlier statehood proposal, if an earlier statehood proposal had taken root. A few decades earlier, many influential Americans suggested that Cuba become a state. Never, ever have I heard that. This is a government map, such as this one, scared Americans to death in 1962. In minutes, the Soviets' MRBMs, medium-range ballistic missiles, medium-range ballistic missile, stationed in Cuba could reach Washington, not to mention a vast swath of the American Southeast. Oh, here. Wait, why could it go here and here, but not? Anyway, oh, okay. So they had both medium-range ballistic missiles and then IRBMs, which are intermediate-range ballistic missiles. Could reach pretty much everywhere else. I see. So these ones could go here, and these ones could go all the way out here. I'll have to remember this page, because this is an interesting map. Anyway, okay. State. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Photographed by U.S. spy planes, this image was one of many that proved the Soviets were setting up nuclear devices in Cuba. If I looked at that map, I'd be like, looks like a trailer park. I don't know. The United States took possession of the first three, but decided to give Cuba its independence. I'm sorry, I skipped a part because it's kind of important. The idea dates back to 1898 at the end of the Spanish-American War. That summer, Spain surrendered and agreed to relinquish the islands of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, and Cuba. Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines, and Cuba. I'm going to Puerto Rico, to Old San Juan soon, and I've never been, so let me know if you have any places I should go. The United States took possession of the first three, but decided to give Cuba its independence. That's interesting. I never knew that either. So much information. Dakota or Pembina, a genius marketing idea. Okay. So they have opposite. Which of these four proposals became law? Dakota, Dakota and South Dakota, West Dakota, East Dakota, Pembina, and Dakota. Right. North Dakota could cash in on the naming rights craze by securing automaker Dodge as a sponsor and then renaming the state Dodge Dakota. As preposterous as that sounds, there is a real-life precedent. In 1950, Ralph Edwards persuaded residents of Hot Springs, New Mexico, population 4,200, to rename their city after his Truth or Consequences radio show. The city remains Truth or Consequences to this day. Check your map. Well, that's funny. Did you know that? So Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Do you want me to get the map? I mean, I have it. You know I have it right here. Oh, look, New Mexico. Page 80. What? See map on page 80. Isn't that weird that it happens to say that right there? What are the chances? Okay. Truth or consequence. Oh, good grief. Like I'm going to be able to see. If I knew where it was, it would help. How big is it? It's probably small. We know it's only 4,000 people, but that was back when they named it. If they gave us at least a semi-location, it would help. You know, I have heard of that. I guess I just never realized it was named after is it a radio show? Hot Springs, named after his Truth or Consequence radio show, yeah. That goes way back. Way back, way back, way back. Well, I don't see it, but I believe them. I believe they are right, but I don't see it. Roswell. Okay. Okay. I'm done. I'm sorry for that. I just feel like I want to find. There's a Las Vegas in New Mexico. What? Things you learn. Okay. Well, never mind. All right, so what happened? Which of the four proposals shown here for the Dakota Territory finally became law? The answer, which you should know, is none of the above. Well, I thought that, but I didn't want to say it because then you guys would all be like, you idiot. All four failed, but it wasn't for lack of trying. The very first Dakota statehood bill suggested that the region be one giant state. The idea received significant support, but then legislators apparently calculated how long it would take to ride a horse from the state capital to the outlying counties. Heck, even at today's interstate speeds, crossing one of the Dakotas seems to take an eternity. The 1877 plan to divide the territory into eastern and western states actually makes sense geographically. The east has good farmland and precipitation. The west doesn't. The problem, of course, is that the West Dakota would have no people. States need people. Yeah, I don't know why he's saying that would make sense. That kind of doesn't make sense, right? An 1882 plan would have made the southern half into a state named Dakota and designated the northern half as Pembina Territory. This proposal had popular support, but the nation's Democratic president wasn't about to add any new Republican-leaning states. It's always politics. But in 1888, Benjamin Harrison, a Republican, won the presidency, and within months, he signed a bill admitting the states of North Dakota and South Dakota into the Union. The story doesn't end there. Leaders in North Dakota periodically trot out the notion that North is a pejorative term. They suggest changing the state's name to just plain Dakota. This idea is proposed with some regularity, namely in 47, 83, 89, and 2001, and it gets news coverage every time. I have to admit, plain Dakota is a great name. Dodge even adopted it for their tough, outdoorsy truck. Yep. Desert. Here's Salt Lake City, Santa Fe, Sacramento, San Francisco, Oregon City, and here is desert. The Mormon Church was born in New York in the 1820s. So how did it end up in Utah? Almost from the beginning, the church's unusual beliefs led to persecution, and members kept transplanting themselves to avoid harassment. Things got especially messy when founder Joseph Smith received a revelation that he should start taking more wives, lots more. Soon he was encouraging other Mormon men to do the same. This diminished the available supply of comely young women, which upset a lot of non-Mormon men, especially the bachelors. For this reason, among others, an angry mob killed Smith in 1844. This left master organizer Brigham Young in charge. He solved the angry bachelor problem by deciding to move the Mormons west to a place that had no white settlements. Thus began the Mormon exodus to the Salt Lake Basin in the mid-1840s. Well, okay. I mean, I've never really heard all that story before. Some of it, I guess. Young's supersized state never came to be, mostly because of the anti-Mormon bias then pervasive in American culture. This was long before the Osmond family taught us that Mormons are super sweet folks with great teeth. After a few decades, the Mormons abandoned polygamy, sort of, and Congress finally offered statehood. Citizens overwhelmingly preferred calling their new state Desert, a name found in the Book of Mormon, but the federal government chose Utah after the Ute tribe. The state's final size was much smaller than the Mormons had originally hoped. The entire western half of the Mormon Empire was sliced off to form Nevada. Right here. Establishing one of the oddest geographical juxtapositions in the United States. Could two states like Nevada and Utah be more different? It is a joke that they are is it a joke that they are adjacent? is Utah. Sorry, I can't read right now. In Utah, it's really hard to get a drink. In Nevada, it's really hard not to get a drink. Okay, whatever. England et al. A bloody awful idea, but you've got to love the British comeback. England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales join Union as states 49, 50, 51, and 52. First new states since Arizona and New Mexico. Role of king unclear as nations come together. What is this? Opposite. The headline Senator Richard Russell was hoping for. Of course, it never happened, and it wasn't his only lost cause. Later, he thought he could win the presidency. That didn't work either. This almost feels like something that the U.S. could try for now. They want Canada. They'll be going to England, Scotland, and Ireland. Forgotonia, an accurate name for the land Illinois forgot. Oh, here's Forgotonia. Here's Missouri, Illinois, Iowa. Illinois is pretty much all corn, says the book. Once you venture outside Chicago, the state becomes one giant field dedicated to the creation of tasty high fructose corn syrup. To serve the corn farmers, small and medium-sized towns have grown up all across the land of Lincoln, cities like Peoria, Decatur, and Springfield. What's curious is the interstate highways connect nearly every one of these villages. Okay. Compare a map of Illinois to a map of, say, Iowa or Missouri, and you almost have to laugh. Illinois has so many more miles of freeway compared to its neighbors. Here's how it happened. A big city like Chicago has lots of people. Hold on, I feel like now we gotta look at this because I've never really thought about it. What does he say to compare it to? Compare a map of Illinois to a map of, say, Iowa or Missouri. Okay, here's Illinois, here's Iowa, and here's Missouri. And here, yeah, I mean, okay, yeah. I just thought it was because they're coming out of Chicago. See, when you come out of a big city like this, it used to be train routes would come out of Chicago, but now, you know that if there are, a lot of times towns like in the South will have a name like Chicago or Dayton or Pittsburgh or Detroit. They'll have these names in these little towns. And that is because the trains would run to the bigger cities in the north. And so they just call these little train stop towns basically after the name of the city the train ran to. So you knew to go to that town to get on the train. So if you're ever like in the South in a town called like Pittsburgh or, Chicago, that's why. I think that's true. My uncle told me that. He knows a lot of stuff. I don't know. I think it's true. Anyway. Okay. All right. Having said all that, one section of the state has been left out. Oh, they tell us how it happens. Why there's so many highways. Here's how it happened. A big city like Chicago has a lot of people, and that means a lot of money and a lot of representation in Congress. But you can build just so many highways in the Windy City. So the downstate residents reap the benefits of living in a populous state. How else can you explain a freeway that has a single purpose of connecting Galesburg and Moline? Okay, there we go. Having said that, one section of the state felt left out. They didn't get any fancy freeways in the 1960s and 70s. In protest, a group of residents decided to form their own state, Forgotonia. They appointed a governor and tried to attract attention. But what they really wanted was an interstate. specifically Interstate 72, which would provide a shortcut between Chicago and Kansas City. Fragatonia still struggles. It's a sad story. Franklin. First, we kill all the lawyers. What? Uh-oh. So we have Kentucky, Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and right here, Franklin. Opposite, proposed state of Franklin superimposed on modern borders. Below, Franklin didn't like Franklin. What were they thinking? That's the question I keep asking myself about the frontier folk of Franklin. Back in 1785, residents of western North Carolina, which is now eastern Tennessee, tried to organize themselves into a new state. Things started downhill with their proposed constitution. It banned doctors and lawyers from election to the legislature. These hardscrabble folks had a real bias against the gentrified neighbors. More than half the existing states voted in favor of admitting Franklin to the Union, but the vote fell short of the necessary 2/3 majority. Franklin proponents then figured they needed a public relations campaign to win the remaining votes, so they tried to enlist the nation's most respected elder statesman, Ben Franklin. After all, they had named the state after him. Ben turned them down flat. The lesson here is that if you're going to name a state after a living historic figure, you should probably ask the person first. Okay. Greenland. Uh-oh. This might hit too close to home. Prime real estate. Even George W. Bush was interested. I think I talked about this in some video, and I can't remember which. About how, there's some military. I think I did a video on Greenland. That's what I did. On why they're trying to make it a state or something. I forget. Anyway, location. Those are the three main reasons the United States has been trying to acquire Greenland since the mid-1800s. But the owner, Denmark, isn't selling. Sure, Greenland's a fixer-upper. But America is still willing to pay full price for the huge chunk of oceanfront property. That's because Greenland sits directly between the United States and Russia. Prime location for missile defense. Yeah, that's why they want it. The first real estate agent who tried to broker a sale of Greenland was none other than Secretary of State William Seward. And although he couldn't quite close the deal on Greenland, he did manage to arrange the purchase of Alaska for 1.9 cents an acre. Some criticized Seward for overpaying, but in retrospect, he made a monumentally good deal, buying a whole state for about the cost of a nice house in Southern California today, $7.2 million. Seward has been largely forgotten. I don't know about that. Though I'd argue that he's one of America's great unsung heroes. He worked tirelessly for the rights of the mentally ill, deeply opposed slavery, and fought for prison reform. I did not know that. Seward. Mr. Seward. Do we know his first name? General Secretary of State William Seward. Okay, might be interesting topic. On the night Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, a similar attempt was made on Seward because he was the president's Secretary of State. I've never heard that. He bore the deep scars of the attack on his face for the rest of his life. 80 years after Seward, a new Secretary of State, James Burns, offered $100 million to the Danes for Greenland, but it didn't even elicit a counteroffer. More recently, President George Bush went to Denmark to appeal to the Danish government. He wasn't looking to buy Greenland outright. Instead, he was laying the groundwork for something of a co-op deal. Denmark would retain the title to the land, but America wanted the right to set up military stuff, which they do have there. Nothing official was signed since these deals seemed to take decades to work out. Interesting. About the only way to understand the value of Greenland is to see it from space. Okay, that was a snarky comment. I've heard it's beautiful. It occupies a prime location between Russia and North America. Yeah. So here's Russia. Yeah. I think I did a video on the whole like Greenland. Why is it in the news or something? I did. I remember that now. All right. Well, that was interesting. I almost need a new card. Hold on. Oh. Cut that one. Let's see which ones we've done. All right, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Greenland. Franklin. Chippewa, Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas. This was from last time. Chicago. Abe Lincoln without a beard. Just speak. Here's Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Charlottesville. State of Boston, Massachusetts. Arizona. This is what happens when there's no mail. And they show New Mexico, Arizonia. Alberta and British Columbia. Albania. They love America like a stalker. I don't even remember these. Adelsverein, German colony. I think there's Acadia or just Maine, time for divorce. Here's Acadia way up north of Maine. Absaroka, Mount Rushmore, Sheridan.